I'm very pleased to introduce who we have here with us today from Algonquin is Robyn and Denise. So maybe you guys could just share with us a little bit about your operations, just some of the details around how you guys run and where your operations are sitting. Anything you'd like to share with us on a bit of a background?
Sure. So our parent company is Algonquin Power Utilities Incorporation. We're a North American diversified generation, transmission, and distribution utility with about $10 billion in assets. We traded on both the New York Stock Exchange and the Toronto Stock Exchange, with our head office in Oakville, Ontario in Canada. We have approximately 2,200 employees. We operate in 9 states and 9 provinces. And we have more than 35 clean energy facilities, including hydro, solar, hydroelectric, and thermal. 1.7 gigawatts of installed capacity. Our organization is split between regulated and unregulated. In the US, our regulated business is Liberty Utilities. And we operate regulated utilities, including water, natural gas, electricity, with 800,000 customers across the US. And the unregulated side of the operation, which is Liberty Power, we generate and sell energy through our portfolio of clean, renewable, and thermal power generation facilities across North America. We own about 35 hydroelectric, wind, solar, and thermal facilities, representing about 1.7 gigawatts of installed generation capacity. And we operate in Canada, in Alberta, Manitoba, New Brunswick, Ontario, Quebec, Saskatchewan. And down in the US, we are in California, Connecticut, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Texas. We operate 12 wind farms with 8 new wind farms currently in development, with about 578 different turbines, with a 1,050 megawatt of wind capacity. Our solar side of the business, we have 4 operational solar farms, with 1 new solar farm currently in development. We have just over 122,000 solar panels across the US and Canada, with a megawatt capacity of about 4,000 megawatt capacity for solar.
Okay, so how about LandWorks? How is it working for your business today? What do you think about the solution as a whole?
It's excellent. I couldn't imagine trying to administer landowner payments and agreements as they had done it prior, which was through an Excel spreadsheet and working with accounting and doing things through a manual check requisition for every payment. When I started in the position, there was bare bones information in LandWorks system, with it recently having been implemented, but I couldn't imagine doing it otherwise. We currently have, I would say, about 1,400 agreements that we monitor, both Robyn and myself. I handle all of the pre-COD, and Robyn handles anything post-COD. We're administering just over 2,800 landowners. So in an Excel format, I could not imagine doing that.
Okay, let's talk about integrations. Maybe you could just speak about how, if it saves you time and, what it would look like maybe without having those integrations.
So we know what it would look like without it, because we used to do all the payments without LandWorks, and it's really significant that the data entry time that we don't have to do anymore. So for Denise and I on our side, sometimes we'll have a project and we're running a payment, it's up to 200 agreements. So that would be individual check requisitions that we don't have to create anymore. But also on the accounts payable side, they love it because they used to have to go in and enter each payment individually by that landowner or vendor number. And now it goes through our system and interfaces, and we send them a batch. So when I'm really busy, usually around January, February, I do a lot of my payments then. So I could do about 6 projects that week, which could be probably over 500 individual payments. And now instead of them all having to do entering, I just send a batch through. So projects, it's 5 batches. They literally just hit post and the payment goes through. So they love it as much as we do.
Yes.
It saves a lot of man hours doing data entry.
Now, do you guys use the file import utility?
Yes, we do. More so used when we acquire new projects. So if we acquire a new project and there's a reason I used it for a project we had, which had over 100 agreements. It was so simple to use, opposed to having to think about the days where without the file import utility, you would have to manually enter all of that information. Mm-hmm. It's now through the spreadsheet, upload, populated. I can send that spreadsheet to our accounting software through Great Plains. They can populate, the two integrate and discuss with one another, and it's seamless. It's really great.
That's great. Great.
Another benefit of that is if the landowner changes their address, so they might go directly to accounts payable or to Denise and I, but regardless, if they go to accounts payable, when they make the address change in their software, it automatically updates in ours, which is great.
Good. That is great. Is there any other challenges that you find that LandWorks really works well for you?
Yeah, there's quite a lot actually of additional value and challenges that it solves. It's that it's a central system for all of our land agreements. Prior to that, we didn't have any, it was manual files. It was difficult to keep track of that sort of thing. And it's now one central database for all of our land agreements. It's not just Robyn and I that use the software. We have our site managers that use the software as well, which allows for multiple users who each have different needs with the system. And as an administrator, you can give them access or privileges to different aspects of the software. So it's not only just for making payments, it's also terrific for our site managers. You can save your documents, the lease agreements, any site plans, any correspondence, any documents right to the system. So again, it's one central place, it's paperless, where that sort of information can be stored. Just the tracking of both, for payments that are due, it's easy to run a payment or to forecast what your payments are going to be each month, to know what payments are up and coming. If someone asks, what's our budget for July that we need to make in landowner payments, it's easy to run a report that will give you that information. One of the other values that it has is just the ability to customize it to your own business needs through the code tables, to be able to specify the types of agreements that you as your own organization uses to the specific types of payments. So the customization to meet your needs, again, is a big added value. Before, when we would be asked questions about infrastructure, what turbine is on Mr. Smith's property? It was always quite an ordeal to go and find that information. Whereas now in LandWorks, you pull up what infrastructure you're looking for. It tells you what agreements it's tied to, what tract of land it's tied to. So the ease of pulling up information is a huge benefit. It's a very big cost saving and time saving for I think one of the biggest things and why we also chose to go with LandWorks opposed to doing the old format of an Excel spreadsheet is agreements that were coming up for expiration. Unless you had somebody who's monitoring that Excel spreadsheet on a daily basis or on a monthly basis, it's pretty quick to see a lease agreement that goes through a termination. You've now lost your termination privileges, or it has a development term of 3 years, and before you know it, 3 years has gone by, and you've now lost that land under that lease agreement because you let it expire. Where for me, one of the big benefits of LandWorks is that it will send you, once you put an expiration in or put an obligation in for anything, it will send an automated email to remind you of different tasks that have to be done, obligations that have to be met. So we have found in the past where agreements may have expired, we had no agreements expire. And in fact, we customize that to be so many months in advance so that it gives us time to be able to renew those agreements with those landowners should we need to. It's a great communication tool as well for all of the users. There's the section to be able to put remarks in different parts of the software. Enables me, as I'm working on something pre-COD that will affect Robyn once we hit post-COD, I can put a remark in there, and when the transition happens over to post-COD and our operations and asset management, all of those obligations and all of those little remarks of idiosyncrasies in a lease agreement, or even just a preference that you want to put in about the landowner, you can put remarks in throughout the software. And to me, that's key, that it can be seen by those that have access to it. It transfers over to our next department, that I'm not having to try and remember to do all of that sort of stuff. Historic, it provides you with historic payments, the history of ownership of a parcel of land. So, you know, you can track as land ownership changes, as agreements ownership changes. You can still see the history on an agreement, history on payments, yet you can bring it up to date with new ownership and any new payment. And if we ever run into problems on how to do something in LandWorks, you're always up with new cost codes, new sorts of things. It's as simple as submitting a ticket into Pandell and your questions are answered.
Good.
And if I could just add to that, because I'm the maintenance, because I'm once the project's up and running, if there is an estate change, you know, it's great that you've got your payment in there, where before it would be an Excel spreadsheet, but you couldn't store documents. So, you know, you can have a copy of the deed. If somebody has left it to a beneficiary, you've got a copy of all the legal documents that you need. So you've got your everything you need to know about that lease and those landowners from beginning to current. And it's great, yeah. Rather than, you know, you've got your Excel spreadsheet, then you have to go to some other data to get all of the documentation.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. That sounds great. Royalty payments, fixed, variable, true ups. Do you want to speak a little bit to this? I know it can get complex out there, I'm sure.
For a fixed payment, so getting everything set up takes a little bit of time, but once you've got it in the system, it's not a lot of work. So for a fixed payment, you would just go into each individual agreement, which represents a lease, and you would put in whatever that flat rate is. And then you would set it up by frequency. So, you know, you could have annual, quarterly, weekly, whatever you need. You can even add an escalation to that. And some leases don't have an escalation, or they differ. You create different escalations. You just add the right one into the right agreement. And then when it's time to run your payment, so for me, I usually go in once a month because I don't have weekly payments. And I'll just put in a bit of criteria like US fund, the date period for what project. And I just say what's due, and all the payments come up. And if they need escalation before I actually make that payment, I just go in and I put in another date range. If it's a variable escalation, I'll put whatever I need to put in. If it's fixed, it's already in there. And you literally just say escalate, and then it goes through every agreement and will increase the amount. For royalties, they're a little bit more work, depending how complex the lease is. It's basically an Excel spreadsheet, and depending on what you need, if it's revenue, if it's by turbine, if there's acreage, you put everything you need in the spreadsheet. Some are a formula, others are a named range, and then you link that Excel spreadsheet into each agreement. And you can have variables. So if you have a couple of leases where they've negotiated different royalty rate, you don't have to do a separate payment profile for that. You can use the same one, but there's a section within this payment profile where you put in a variable, and you'll say, you know, this is 4.5% versus 3%. Once you've got it all set up there, it's as simple as when it's time to make a payment, you import, again with file import utility, if it's production or sales, whatever your information is. Another simple spreadsheet of date range, your revenue amount of production, project number. You just import it in, it goes into the tracks of the agreement, and then you just go up and you say, run royalty payments, and it'll go through. Usually takes a couple minutes. There's one project we have, it's massive, and it also has 2 different profiles on it. Some are royalty, others are a shared community, and that might take 20 minutes max, and then your payments are there. It's actually quite simple once you get it set up.
Nice.
You need a little bit of Excel. You should be pretty good with formulas to be able to create it, but Pandell offers creating them for us, which we've had them do a couple for us in the past. So Denise and I are just starting to do it ourselves, and we gave ourselves an A+ on the last one.
Oh, good for you guys. That's great. Perfect. Okay, so aside from the product itself, what do you guys feel about the industry? Any changes that you see maybe are on the horizon?
So speaking from the renewable energy side of things, there's nothing but growth that's really forecasted in our industry, both to increase innovation and collaboration among many of the multiple stakeholders. We're finding that regulators and utilities are preferring renewable energy to replace some of the retiring capacity. Like we have just recently replaced a coal facility that we purchased as part of a larger electrical purchase of Empire when we purchased Empire Electric. We retired their coal facility and converted that to 2 wind farms, which we're expecting construction to be complete by January of next year. But if you listen to some of the industry standards from a renewable energy standpoint, like renewable energy makes up about 26% of the world's electricity today. And by 2024, they're hoping it reaches about 30% capacity. And just kind of as a thought, like the solar capacity is supposed to grow up to 600 gigawatts, which is almost the total amount of installed electricity capacity for Japan. Like it's quite a lot. And from the wind side of things, the renewable energy in the US is predicted to grow about 1,200 gigawatts by 2024, which really is equivalent to the total electric capacity of the US. Like it's nothing but growth that's happening. We're currently developing projects and plan on by 2023 to add 2 gigawatts of generation capacity of renewable energy. And with all of this come land leases and reliance upon landowners. And as growth continues, it's just more and more information that organizations are going to have to track and pay these landowners, pay them efficiently, pay them with royalty payments. And it's really, you have to have a reliable system to be able to do that.
Thank you, guys. Now let's open it up over to Eliza. And if there are any questions from the audience that you'd like to share with them.
We do have a few questions. Can you further describe the payment integration batch process and what system do you use? And the other question is, are your payments processed through SAP? And if so, was the integration process timely?
So we're currently using Great Plains, and these payment batches that we run. So basically when you're finished hitting, it's very simple on the LandWorks side. So you just check and run what payments are due. And then when you're happy with what you want to pay, you just hit print checks, and then you're done on the LandWorks side. But it does create this, it's a batch. It's like a text file for us, and it exports out to another drive for us. And then we have this integration. It's like it's really just a simple Excel spreadsheet that we load the data into. So that is the interface portion. So we basically go in and just hit load data, and you search for the file, this text file that LandWorks has created. And then you just hit load and go, and then it'll say it's successful. And then the batch has gone over to accounts payables, which is Great Plains. And then the accounts payable department will go and search through the batch and they'll just see it and post it. They always make sure that their numbers match up between what I've sent and what shows up in Great Plains. And I'm honestly not sure on their end how it works, but they just hit post, and I guess it eventually runs checks for them. And then we're actually working on getting SAP. So, and I believe LandWorks works with SAP with other customers.
Yeah, that's true. We do have clients using SAP in production today. So when Algonquin moves over to that SAP system for accounting, they'll be able to use that just the same way they use Great Plains, just a slightly different interface, using the same tools, just interfacing to a different accounting system.
The next question is, what is your process for generating letters to landowners?
Within LandWorks, you can set up a form document. For instance, I always like to have a statement letter that goes out with all of the payments to the landowners. That is personalized to what their actual payment is. It's almost very similar, and I may, from a technological standpoint, be saying this incorrectly, but it's almost like what I would have thought of as like a mail merge. You create a document within a Word document within LandWorks with different fields, and those fields relate to fields within Pandell's LandWorks, which will basically, once it's run, it will populate the statement letters to each individual landowner.
Did the Algonquin team have much individual experience in IT before working with LandWorks? My experience with IT is limited, and I'm wondering if this will affect my training and use of the system. Very
user-friendly. No, you don't need to have any IT background to be able to use the software. It's very user-friendly. We have IT support for the integration side of things, but that's more from, it's not LandWorks, it's the integration software that we use to go into Great Plains. But no, you don't have to be a computer whiz to be able to use the software at all. It's fields of information, and it's just completing all of the fields.
Well, thank you guys so much, Denise and Robyn, for sharing your time with us today and making the time to share your expertise and your experience within our tools and in the industry. We really, really appreciate it.